Good morning, Maria.
Good
Or
morning,
good
Anna.
afternoon. Sorry. Good
That's all
afternoon.
right. Good morning to you.
Yeah.
How things are going there?
Yes, we have a lot of rain still. So basically, for like the last 2 months, it's been raining almost nonstop. But so it's kind of, I'm experiencing your weather out here.
And we're experiencing your weather in here. It's lovely
Oh,
sunshine and mild temperatures in the UK. And this is why I'm so happy about this session, sharing your weather and talking about ISO standards, which is what we do, you and I, when we're together.
yep.
So, thank you for inviting me again and accepting the idea to approach the standards by clauses rather than standards.
Yes, that will be very helpful for many that will be watching this so they understand what actually takes place and why in the implementation with us.
Absolutely. And let's focus on clause 4, which is actually the first effective clause in each standard. Ladies and gentlemen, you already know probably, if you're not, we're going to tell you that all ISO standards, management system standards, actually benefit from a unique structure. It means that then they can be implemented one by one or in an integrated manner, and those clauses will always be the same with some differences and add-ons on each standard, but basically the structure remains the same. So when we approach standards, ISO standards implementation, so we start with the famous clause 4, which is knowing our contexts and interested parties and internal and external issues. Pamela, you work with different sectors, different companies. How do they approach this clause in your experience as a salesperson? What do you have to tell them at the beginning?
Well, I always let them know that each one of the clauses have a certain degree of importance, and that as the assessor slash auditor is working with them, with each one of these clauses, that you because you're one of our assessor slash auditors, that you handhold them through the entire process. And so even if they're not familiar with each one of these clauses or any of them for that fact, you are able to explain it to them and help them with the implementation with each one of the clauses. And that it's not, because many people, when I'm talking to them, they think that this is going to add a lot of processes and procedures and policies to what they're doing. So it's going to make it more lengthy, I should say. And your job as an assessor, Maria, isn't it to lean down their process? Is that correct?
Absolutely. And as we say, we start with knowing who we are and where we operate. This is all about clause 4, the context of our organization. All those SWOT analyses are not a requirement of standards. I always recommend to organizations to actually have a look at their SWOT analysis, if they have any, and adapt it to the precise standard they would like to implement. Normally, organizations do have generic strategic SWOT analysis. However, let's say that for starters, it's very important that the SWOT analysis they use is actually focused on the area, domain, on the standard that they're going to implement. For instance, if we talk quality management, maybe a more generic one will be okay. But when we talk information security, we should tailor our SWOT analysis to information security, data protection, and privacy protection as well. So this is very important. As I say, SWOT analyses are not compulsory in ISO standards, although they help a lot. And Honestly, with the latest 27,001 version, information security, SWOT analysis are still not compulsory, but highly, highly recommended.
Yes,
So uh, make good use of what you already have. I think, Pamela, that most businesses do some SWOT, don't they?
correct. Yes,
So as you can see, it is nothing different from what you already do as a business. It's all about focusing on the right um, aspects and on the right standard. So thanks to the ISO standards, actually we can fully understand our environment. We no longer focus only on our internal issues as an organization, but also have a look at what can affect, what can impact our business coming from outside. So let's say for quality management system, interesting in external aspects may be customers, the wider public, our nation, potential transport hubs, depending on the supply chain, etc. Internal aspects, our own organizational culture, the way we manage our system, our internal knowledge, and our capability, why not, to deal with suppliers, customers, or other stakeholders.
very helpful for any business.
Right, business. Now, let's look at close for the context, internal issues from, let's say, environmental management point of view. And let's pick up an academic sector. Let's say we're working at a high school and they want to actually reduce their environmental impact. Uh, I'm mentioning it because recently we worked with high schools and an interesting external issue we discovered was the demography. Demographic aspects are very important. Why? Because in a few years there might be more or less pupils. So that would impact somehow the environmental management system.
Absolutely.
And this is why we decided to approach the standards by clauses, just talking about each clause and try to identify how we can adapt our our system around each clause and depending on each selected standard. So this is about the context. Normally, clause subclause 4.1, we have to understand who we are, where we are, what can impact us internally and externally. Next step, that would be identifying interested parties or the so-called stakeholders. Who are they? Well, Pamela knows that I always say something and I stick to it as the rule of thumb to identify interested parties or stakeholders. We think of every single organization or individual that can affect our organization or its operations, and always and not or every organization or individual that we can impact with our operations. And Pamela, can you please list for me, just mention a few interested parties that your customers come across?
Well, vendors. So that's a big one.
Yeah,
Um, I would say also their clients. So those are big ones. And, everybody that has anything to do with management, ownership, leadership.
indeed. Let's talk about the employees. Let's talk about our insurers, the wider public. everyone may somehow impact us, and we may impact someone without taking it into account. The impact on our operations might be negative. So it is worth a thought about who the individual and the organizations around us are, and how we interact with them, identify the interfaces between us and those organizations and individuals. And here's a quick question I always shoot out at everyone that might like to listen to me. And it is again ISO 27001 related. Are hackers interested parties in our information security management systems? So, honestly, most people react saying, oh no, of course they're not. Well, actually, they are. Why? Because, let's get back to my rule of thumb. They are an organization or individual that want to impact negatively, always negatively, our operations. And B, we, as an organization, try not to allow them to do it. So we try to bounce out their actions. By default, hackers, all those very bad people are out there that want to impact us, are stakeholders in our information security management system. Precisely in that one, they may or may not be relevant to all systems. So again, we have to have in mind which standard we implement, and then evaluate our interested parties, their needs and expectations, and thus work out what we can do. Needs and expectation panel is something very interesting. Organizations sometimes don't think too much about it. What's the difference? I've seen slash expectations. So let's pick up again the example with the hackers. It illustrates pretty well the difference. Their need is to rob us of our information, and their expectation is to be able to do it. So needs and expectations may be slightly different. So please, when you think about interested parties, think of both what they need to do, what's the purpose, and how they expect it to be achieved. So this is how we'll be able to better evaluate our environment, organizational environment.
Very well put. And a lot of organizations, they don't really spend a lot of time thinking about risks and risk management. And that is really what each one of these clauses are about.
Absolutely amazing point, Pamela, because when we evaluate the context, when we evaluate our interested parties' needs and expectations, and we have a decent SWOT analysis, we'll be able to actually identify weaknesses and strengths, as well as the rest of the elements, opportunities as well, and threats. And those will be, on the one side, the risks that we have to register and manage, as well as the opportunities. Because, as you say, ISO standards are all about risks and opportunities, both. Because risks may lead to opportunities. It doesn't happen always, unfortunately, but as well as opportunities may conditions some risks, so we have to evaluate them as well. But remember, this is going to come in clause 6, planning, but clause 6 is based on clause 4, where we identify our context, our parties. We know We need what they expect from us, and thus we are able to see where our weaknesses may lay in order to address them efficiently. And a very interesting element of clause 4 is actually the scope of our system. The scope of the system is that definition of boundaries and what we actually want to do that help us, in a few words, in a few sentences, identify the role, the system in our organization. Let's say define very precisely the processes that we cover, departments, or the whole organization. And here, let's say something important: the standards that must be implemented within the whole organization. But there are the standards that may cover only a part of the organization or process. Such a standard would be the latter one would be 27001 information security that can be implemented only in one department or throughout a process, even if the process is developed in several multiple locations.
Very, very good information. If a lot of companies knew exactly what the clauses are and why, I think many more businesses and organizations would be hopping on board with ISO certification.
I'm certain they would. It's actually quite nice to work with ISO standards because ISO standards do not change the way we work. They only help us identify what we do in an efficient manner, where the redundancy may lay, and help us eliminate those, which is brilliant because when we become more efficient, we become we make more money.
Absolutely.
So, in our experience and the data to support it, ISO standards, efficiently implemented ISO standards actually reduce the workload and bring in good money. Example, 45,001, why not? Insurers are looking forward to for organization to meet the expectations on safety, health and safety. So organizations that operate efficient 45,001 management systems are more likely to benefit from a reduced quote.
Absolutely, that's correct. Not only with workers' compensation insurance, medical health care insurance, those premiums that they spend a ton of money on annually, those go down. And then any future OSHA fine that they'll only have to pay a third up to 50% of the fine because they have the certificate, the certification. And, you know, I like to always clear up the misconception when people say, oh, well, we have the standard implemented, like 45,001, we have it implemented into our process and the way that we run our business, but it doesn't matter. What matters is the actual certificate, so that you actually take that second step to get certified, because once you have that certificate, that's where the financial benefits come in, such as saving on the OSHA fines and reducing the healthcare costs and workers' comp costs.
And elevating your reputation. So another point to discuss with clause 4, that would be the process mapping. So in clause 4, we have the indication about mapping our processes, which is kind of nice, and most organizations already have identified and mapped out their processes. So we structure clause 4 around the whole organizational context, including environment, interfaces with organizations, where we want to implement the system and how, what for, and we map our processes to support this initial statement of intention, to say, to put it in a different way, for how the whole thing starts happening. I suspect we can discuss next time, Pamela, because it's part of part of clause 5, which is the next clause, and maybe we should have a talk about the importance of leadership, their commitment, and the clause 5 of all standards next time we talk. What do you think?
Absolutely, absolutely, because unless you have the leadership's buy-in to carry out the process, um, you won't have much success. But once the entire leadership understands the importance, they usually get on board pretty quickly.
Yeah, and we'll see as well how clause 5 slightly changes in each standard.
Sounds good to me.
Lovely talking to you again,
Nice.
and I hope we can reconvene in a few weeks.
Absolutely. We'll pick up right where we left off today.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, everyone. Caroline, can you please take over now? Thank you.
Bye now.
Bye.